What's up, everybody? Welcome to Make Things Tiny. My name is Mick. If you're sitting here today thinking tiny houses are really cool, but I have no idea where I would put one, and I have no idea where to start if you don't have one already, this is a great video for you. I'm talking to Tiffany. Tiffany is the creator of Beauty and a Builder here on YouTube. Make sure you check out their channel. And they've also built their own tiny house from scratch and put it on their own land that they own. So this is a great video for those of you who are curious about DIY tiny house builds. Make sure you watch to the end so you can get specific advice on how to start your own DIY tiny house journey. And make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can find out when I have other videos that come up, and you can check out all the other videos I have available on the channel too. Let's get into it. Hey, Tiffany, thank you so much for being on the channel. Tiffany is the creator of Beauty and the Builder here on YouTube. I'm really excited for people to learn more about you and just sort of what got you interested in tiny homes. If you don't mind talking about sort of what got you started with the tiny house that you ended up building and in tiny houses in general, and then we can go from there.
All right, awesome. Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to kind of share, my story and how I decided to go tiny living. It's not for everyone, but I think once you actually get to live in it, you can see how awesome it is. And I guess for me, it kind of just started really randomly, those days where you're just kind of watching those random videos at 2 a.m. on YouTube, and all of a sudden I stumble across a tiny house video, and, it's one of the ones on a trailer, and I just kind of look at it like, wow, that's really cool. So, kind of leaning off of that, I just started being more fascinated by them. I was like, oh, that's so cute. You can design it. And I think the fact that it had a challenge to it, which was you have to fit everything in a really, really small, tight space, was even more cool to me. And it seemed like less work at the time, but I will say that is not true. And so it just kind of stumbled into, this was like when I was in high school, my early years. And I remember for our senior project, we had to do just like a general project. It could have been on any topic in order to graduate. And I did mine on tiny houses and how good they are for the environment, how good they are for the community, and they're sustainable, they're affordable. At least most of them are. I have seen some people exaggerating a little bit. And I think it's just an awesome way, especially for people my age, just fresh out of high school or fresh out of college. And, clearly being a loan officer too, we know that interest rates are a little rough right now. So it's not as easy to, live that American dream that everyone's trying to, instill in us. And so I think we just kind of have to create our own.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you bring up a lot of really important points. Like it's too expensive. Like houses are too expensive. And if you want that freedom to just own your own home, and then if you have a tiny house on wheels, be able to move your home as well too, it is a great option for people. And yeah, historically they have been more affordable. The prices are definitely going up, but I'm glad that you were able to sort of get involved in the industry before some of those price hikes that we're seeing right now. So it's really great that you're able to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's just a great thing to not be able or not have to have so many liabilities on your back at such a young age. Like I pay a mortgage, I don't pay rent. But the rent or the mortgage, excuse me, is for the property that we park on.
Yeah.
Which means I can rent out the house. So I'm practically chilling,
Yeah.
God bless. I have the means for it. So I'm very blessed and thankful for that. And I think it was just a really unique strategy, I guess, to be able to live, and have the peace of mind and be able to work and focus and invest a little bit more on my businesses rather than having to, spend all my money on rent and all of these other expenses that are very much necessary. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
But it's just heavy, especially, in today's market. Like I said, it's crazy being in the real estate world. So I
Yeah.
totally understand how it is.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you. I think that, it is kind of a wild sort of ride that we're on right now. When did you build your tiny house? When did that build start, and how long was that process?
Yeah, of course. So we started back, oh God. I think it was like 2019-ish because I
Okay.
graduated 2020. So yeah, 2018, 2019. It took 3 years to build, like
Hmm.
almost on the exact day. We started in August and almost finished the same day in August, which was kind of a coincidence. But the reason for that was I practically did all of the work myself.
Hmm.
So, not only did I have to physically do the labor for it, I had to save up the money and being in high school, you don't exactly get one of those high paying jobs. So I was working 3 jobs, saving up, bought the trailer, which was the biggest purchase, obviously, and the biggest commitment. And then, would work a few more months and then, oh, let's start, with the framing. And that's kind of how it went. So it took long for many reasons. And also just having to, YouTube how to do little things like, oh, how do you, install a window, or how do you, put some baseboards on, little things like that, because I didn't know how to do it. So every
Yeah.
step had almost like this period of like budgeting, learning, doing. So it was like a very repetitive formula. Um, but I mean, it took 3 years and I finished it. So I think that's success. Might be faster for some people and, slower for others. But I think the amount of things that you learn is just, I mean, there's nothing better than it, because, a toilet might break in a future house that you're living in, and now you know how to fix it. So it's a great life skill to have.
Yeah, of course, I'm sure. And it's not something that you can really put a price on either.
Mm.
So, whether it takes you a year or 3 or 10, you got it done. And I think that that's the most important part. I
Mhm.
think it's really cool that you're able to own the land too, because that is kind of one of the biggest issues within the community is
Mhm.
not knowing where to put the house. So I think that it's great that you found a place to put it and you own that place. You don't have to worry about someone raising the rent for the lot or anything like that too.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of a crazy journey. It's not as easy. We are in Florida, which is
Hmm.
kind of like that in between state. It really depends on the county that you're located in. We have quite a few tiny house communities,
Hmm.
but I just knew that I didn't really want to live in one. I think they're awesome. It's just I really like to have my own yard, and I kind of had this idea of buying a house and renting it out and being able to make some income to help pay for the mortgage and a few other things too. So I kind of had this idea. It did come like way after the fact though. I practically built the tiny house not knowing what I was going to do with it, not knowing where I was going to put it, not knowing, that I needed to have a septic tank attached to it, those little portable ones. So I
Yeah.
think those challenges you just kind of figure out along the way. And it's like, well, we already came this far, so I'm not going to, you know, um, see that as like a huge hurdle, because the biggest hurdle was building the thing.
Hmm.
So it's just, really awesome to be able to have my own space. I hope one day to open a community so that way I can kind of facilitate it for other people. And so they don't have to go through that struggle of, they want to build one, but the hardest part is legally parking it and
Yep.
legally, having the infrastructure for it so that way you can live comfortably. So, it is very wish-washy, but I think sometimes, depending on your lifestyle and where you live and, certain legal loopholes, if you will, um, you can kind of just get it done.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I'm glad that you brought that up. I was going to ask you about sort of like the reception of tiny homes in your area. I feel like you've covered that. Just the idea of like every county differs in terms of the laws they're going to put in place in terms of like what you can do and the permitting and things like that. So yeah, again, like what you've done
Mhm.
is kind of ideal, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen, because you eliminate the worries about where you're going to put it, and then that is kind of why more tiny house communities are popping up, because I think people are trying to do what you're talking about, just give people a little bit of like relief on the, well, I want to do this, and building it yourself too, with
Mhm.
how many people maybe can't afford to buy one at the prices that they're at. But
Mhm.
yeah, you have to have land to put it on if you want to build it yourself, and if it takes a few years, that's another issue that people might run into too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the hardest part, like I did do research, I didn't want to build something that had absolutely no chance of ever being lived in because you can't
Hmm.
park it anywhere, and like I said, we're in Florida. I didn't really want to move cross country to like somewhere, tiny house friendly states. I'd be more than happy to, but it's just, obviously a lot for a teenage, I guess, used to be teenager.
Yeah.
But just kind of seeing, RV parks don't really accept us because they're
Right.
DIY built. So obviously there's a lot of liability involved. There are a few companies where you can, get inspections done and they actually certify it. So that way you are legally allowed to park in RV parks. It just depends on the owner. So there's a few little tricks in here and there. But if you really want to, have your space and you really like just, having a quaint corner, And obviously, trying to have your bills paid for, by a tenant or something like that, because they have an awesome house with an awesome yard too, because their property is big enough for that. While we just, separated a little corner off for ourselves. So it's a great way to utilize that and just utilize agricultural land, which a lot of people don't talk about because they have some of the most flexible zoning and regulations that you can find that really help with the tiny house movement.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, no, I think that's a really good point too. I didn't think about that with the different types of land, but that would
Mhm.
make sense that agricultural land would have more like looser guidelines.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you, so you've talked a little bit about it being, obviously you built it yourself. Can you talk a little bit about the design of it, like the size of it, like what size made sense for you in terms of the length, and what sort of features did you decide to put in it? What did you think like, oh, I can't live without this versus some other things?
Yeah, of course. So I guess in my head, I was really trying to make it as small as possible, because I knew that it would take, well, I thought it would take less work. You still have to do everything you have to do in a regular house, so it's really kind of the same thing. But I also just wanted it small enough to where it wouldn't be a big hassle to transport it. Because I did have plans to kind of move around, and that kind of thing. I don't know if I think about that now. I probably will, but I don't know if I would sacrifice taking my tiny house with me. Um, but we have taken our places, so it's small enough to where, a larger truck could pull it, which is really nice, but it's not one of those like 40-foot tiny houses where, don't fit anywhere. And kind of just like takes the tiny house living to another level. But mine is 8 by 20 feet. But we really pushed it
Okay.
on the side limit. I know that in, I forget what it's called, like the road regulations for it, you can only make a trailer so big before you need a permit to pull it, because it's wider than the lanes. So I want to make sure we were within that limit, which the trailer is, but everything we put on top of it, I don't think it would pass. But thankfully, we don't have too many plans of moving it. So that was really nice. But the size, honestly, I guess I don't think I would make it any bigger. I did think that like halfway between the build, I was like, oh, it would have been nicer to have, a little more room here, a little more room there. But like everything that we have in the tiny house fits me, and I'm pretty tall, and it fits my husband, which is 6'1". And, considering it's tiny living, you would think, oh, that's probably not too comfortable for, taller people. But everything fits great. Our bathroom is like 3 by 8, which is really
Mhm.
small, and it has a shower. We have a sink, we have a toilet, obviously, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because 3 feet is not a lot of space to walk around in. But I think one of the most important things for me was just having my closet and my beauty space. I used to be a makeup artist, so I have my little makeup collection, and I just love getting ready. That's one of my most important. And the kitchen, not so important. I don't really, not a huge fan of cooking, so it wasn't like a huge priority. Obviously, we needed, stovetop and things like that. So I think where mine differentiates from other people is I really focused on making the closet bigger than the kitchen or the same size, where people would normally do the kitchen on both sides. I just did my kitchen on one side, and it's like one, like, I don't know, 7-foot counter. And the other side is the staircase, which is the full closet, which surprisingly fit like 3/4 of what I had at my mom's house, which was a full walk in closet. So I think we really, I guess, engineered the closet to fit as much as possible in the space that we had.
I think that's great that you were able to prioritize what you wanted and get it too though. So I think that makes sense. Like if you're not cooking a lot, you really don't need a big kitchen. And I think when you're making a tiny house and you're designing it, you really do get to be, that strategic about what you're putting in there. Like if you want a big loft space, you can put a big loft space in there. You want a big bathroom, you can put a big bathroom in there. So I think that's great that you're able to fit all that in 8 by 20. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, and I'm sure like for people, that are watching the video, they'll be like, oh, that sounds like tiny, but it really isn't. Like I think, you have to like walk through the space to be able to see like and really think about, well, do I actually need all of the space that I currently have? Like you think about like even if you live in a bigger house, you probably only spend most of your time in like 1 or 2 rooms. So a tiny house is just taking those 1 or 2 rooms and just living in those. So it
Yeah,
sounds like
just
you've done a great job of like, designing it to, what you and your husband need. So I think that's great that that space works for you.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I took probably a year just researching. So I
Hmm.
really wanted to make sure, and because I didn't really have any reference points, I did at one point go to see a tiny house that someone had previously built.
Yep.
Um, and I think it kind of scared me just a little bit because obviously it was built for them and not for me. So I saw a huge
Hmm.
kitchen that took up half the house, and then they had like a huge lounge area. And I'm not quite one of those people. I like I work from home, so I need an office space. And like I said, I like my clothes and my makeup. So that was most important to me. Some people might think it's crazy that I have, half the house is consumed by that stuff. But hey,
Hmm.
it works for me. And my house
Yeah.
honestly feels large. Every time I sit in here, I'm like, wow, this place is kind of big.
No, I think that's great. It's your place. So
Hmm.
yeah, it definitely should be exactly the way that you want it. And I think, we all have different things that we care about in our home. But again, like I think that's kind of what makes tiny houses so, I think, interesting to most people and like attractive to people now to move into is like design your space, keep it small and simple, and then focus on the other things that matter to you in your life, which it sounds like you're doing. So I think that, again, I think that's really great.
Thank you. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
awesome. And I'm sure you can relate to it as well, having interviewed, multiple people. I'm sure everyone has their own little thing
Mhm.
that's special to them in their house, which I think is one of the most unique parts of having one.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it differs a lot from unless you have like a ton of money. I think now it's like millions of dollars or at least, $700,000 to like build your own like standalone home from scratch. You
Mhm.
are going to have to compromise in probably a bigger way than you would if you just, built your own tiny house or designed a tiny house yourself. So I think when you compare it to what, we're used to doing, which is compromising when we're looking for houses to buy, I think it's a win-win in my opinion. But
Oh,
I'm
100%.
biased, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, we all are. Everyone who owns a tiny house says it's the best thing ever. There are some downsides, obviously, but I think
Mhm.
everything has a solution. And if it doesn't, it just needs a little bit of tweaking and you're there.
Mhm. Yeah. Can you provide an example of that? Like one thing that you would consider to be a potential downside, but then like also like how you can sort of like overcome it?
Um, ooh, that's a good question. Had to think about it for a second. I think, oh, like for me, I come from a Brazilian family, so the
Mhm.
houses in Brazil, it's gonna lead to somewhere, I promise. The
No, that's
houses
fine.
in Brazil, uh, typically they influence a lot of indoor-outdoor living.
Mhm.
So like they'll have like a house here, and then they'll have like a huge patio with like a pool or something, like the nicer houses. And even, like the smaller houses or like farms and things like that, they really prioritize that. Um, and so I think one of the challenges is like making the space feel large, not so claustrophobic. And, I guess for some people, they just like to feel like they're outdoors all the time and just like nature and a lot of light. Because essentially you're in a rectangle box.
Yeah.
So I think for me, we're kind of jumping that hurdle because
Mhm.
we have one giant double doors that, practically feels like you're outside because it just keeps on going. And also too, we're kind of building like an outside patio area where our kitchen window opens in an awning style. So it's going to be like an indoor outdoor bar kind of thing for cookouts and having friends. Because I think one of the biggest struggles is being able to fit people in here comfortably. And typically they
Yeah.
don't feel comfortable because they just feel like they're in your bedroom, like in your master bed. And
Yeah.
it's a weird feeling to have because people are like, "Oh, I don't feel so comfortable." And it's like, "No, come in. Like, this is the house, like, hang out. You can sit on the couch." And so I think having that outdoor area addition, granted it's not, technically part of the tiny house, but I built it in order to feature that so that we could have that kind of hangout space, influenced obviously by our Brazilian culture because we love to have people over.
Mm. That's a really good example because I do think like, you're right. Like the indoor outdoor living, it's something that some tiny house like builders I've seen are trying to accomplish either by adding on a deck, like deck add-ons are becoming popular. But like those sorts of things. So yeah, I see your point with like you're just creating like an outdoor space where you feel like, people come in that they can always like sit on like your patio, like they would, if they were at your like more like larger like standalone home. But yeah, I didn't think about that because like when I've gone and like looked at tiny houses, like I love them. So when like I go inside, I think like this is the house, and I'm excited to look at everything and see stuff. So the next time I go and like tour one, I'll have to think about it from that perspective. Like if there was like a family living in here, would I feel like I'm like in their bedroom or
Yeah.
not? But that was a smart solution to it, I feel like too.
Yeah, I think it's all about balance too, you know. Like I said, we have quite a few people over every now and then. We haven't yet because, you know, everything is still in the process of being built, in terms of like the deck and the outside area. Um, but I have noticed people who don't necessarily know what tiny living is, they're kind of a little taken aback by it. So I really wanted to make sure, you know, that we just made our company feel comfortable. You know, not that they're intruding in on our space, and they have a place to sit, of course.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. No, that makes sense to me. So what would you say to someone that's watching that's thinking like, wow, like Tiffany's like done this really cool thing. Like I totally want to build my own tiny house. Like what advice would you give to them that kind of want to do something similar to what you've done?
Yeah, of course. I would say it's gonna feel like you're hiking Mount Everest. Not that I know what that feels like,
Mhm.
nor probably will I ever. But it seems like a
Yeah.
big feat. That's the point. And I think this is just kind of with anything in life. And me and my therapist have chats about this all the time. You know, some things might seem overwhelming, and they are. But I think you have
Mhm.
to break them down into little chapters almost. So, like for me, when I first thought about building the tiny house, it was like, oh my gosh, I have a entire house to build. I have to learn how to do plumbing, electrical, AC, flooring, window installation, roofing. It's like the list just keeps going, not to overwhelm anybody. Um,
Mhm.
but it is overwhelming, you know, and I think that's the reality of it. So I think if you take those, and granted 3 years is a long time, but that was just my learning timeline, if you will. Um, you really just have to take it step by step. So, you know, hey, step one is saving up, you know, $6,000, you know, researching the trailer. Hey, step one is done. Congrats, you know, like give yourself a pat on the back. Step two, we gotta, you know, learn how to frame the floor or the base of the house because essentially it's gonna hold up all the weight. So, you know, you go back, you do the research, you study, you ask questions. Um, you ask your friends who work in construction or even ask like a builder in your area. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help. Like I literally befriended everyone at Lowe's at this point, because I'm in there literally every day buying something. And they're like, oh, you're the girl with the tiny house. I'm like, yeah, that's me. So it's really awesome. I think, you know, the community that's willing to help, but you really just have to like take the giant picture and break it down into little sections because you know, it is a lot of stuff. But I think if you know, hey, today we're going to learn how to, you know, cut window trim and how to install it and, you know, do the finishing touches properly. Once you're done, it's like, wow, we can move to the next step. And it just feels a lot more attainable than looking at it like a big project. And like I said, that can literally apply to anything in life, which I
Mhm.
have been learning to digest. But I think for the tiny house, that was probably my biggest lesson learned in life. And I'm glad that I learned it early.
I think that's really good advice too, because I think it can be really overwhelming for people just when you sit down to create any sort of big project, just to think like, oh man, I can't do this. There's way too many steps and I don't have any of the skills, right? Like most people don't have the house building skills beforehand. So I think that's really good advice to just break it down into little steps and also celebrate it too. I think sometimes we can get so focused on the end goal that we forget like you built a house. So like every step of the way you were doing something really fun and really cool that most people can't do. So I think we forget that, you know, it's important to celebrate when you're doing something like every little bit. You know, it helps you keep going. And it's also, you know, you got to live in the moment even when it's kind of stressful, which I'm sure, you know, building a house can be pretty stressful. So yeah,
Oh,
that's a good advice.
yeah, in the Florida heat especially, but we're actually in the process of building my husband a tiny house now. We're
Hmm.
doing kind of like a like I said, the dual living space,
Good.
kind of like Brazilian culture. And
Yeah.
so his has been going very fast because I've already done this before. So his is like a speedy
Hmm.
version of it, and we're obviously hiring people out to do some of the work, just because it's a little, you know, like electrical, plumbing, that kind of stuff. Because I have
Yeah.
failed many times to do it by myself, so I rather just now that we have a little more you know, money that we can afford it, thankfully. We decided to have it done the right way the first time and not have to worry about it. But,
Hmm.
you know, I tell him, you know, like, take a day off, come sit in here and like breathe it in, because soon the insulation's going to be up, the walls are going to be up, and it's going to be done. And, I think the special part about feeling like it's your home is the fact that you put blood, sweat, and tears quite literally into it.
Yeah.
So I just have to remind him of that, like, hey, it's nice to see the progress, but just make sure you're taking it in, right?
Mhm. Oh, yeah. That's awesome that you're building a place for your husband too.
Mhm.
That's really cool. I like that concept. I like the idea of like having multiple tiny houses on the property. I think that just makes it fun.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think that's really cool that it's going faster too. That's awesome. So yeah, no, I think it's really exciting. I think it's exciting what you've already done, but I'm also excited for, for you in general, everything that you're doing. It seems really like you're having a good time and you're doing some really cool things. So yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully the next project we can, start helping out other people who want to build tiny houses. That's kind of the end goal for me.
Mhm.
And I think, having done it once myself, now doing it with my husband, and then hopefully, helping out somebody in the community, and then eventually just opening up a park to help, everyone who needs affordable housing essentially. I think that there's a little baby steps that you have to take for that. And I guess my Mount Everest is getting to that tiny house park.
Yeah.
But it's just one day at a time or one house at a time.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, definitely. I mean, you said it really well. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
no, thank you. I appreciate it, Tiffany. I think that anyone that watches this is going to learn a lot from you and your experience, and hopefully feel encouraged too. We could use as much encouragement as possible nowadays. So I think
Mhm.
that I'm excited for people to just learn more about you and what you're doing, and links to your like YouTube channel and your social media will be in the video description, so anyone can sort of reach out and ask you questions. And yeah, I'm
Awesome.
excited to see what you do next. Thank you again. I appreciate you for coming on the channel.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy that I could help. And, hopefully, if anyone has any questions at all, I'm an open book. Like I said, I feel like most people in the community are, like that. We just really want to help other people and help them be able to accomplish the goal, whether it's building one or buying one or, whatever you're trying to do. We just all want to see, the community succeed, essentially.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's what I'm finding too, and I think it's what makes it people like want to be a part of it also, because it's really cool to meet other people that just want to help and like share their resources or their knowledge on the topic. So yeah, I think that's great.
100%. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure all of us stay up till 2 a.m. watching tiny house tours, so here's another one for you. As you walk in, this is what you see. This is my husband's wardrobe. He came after the fact that I started building the tiny house, so this was kind of an improvise. This way we have the bathroom. I know you guys are probably thinking it's really small. It's actually not that small. This gorgeous glamcore mirror, and then we have all of our mess in here. Our baby toilet. On top of the toilet, we have this huge thing. This is essentially our garage. And then as soon as you walk out of the bathroom, you have the kitchen, but we do have a sliding door. We have food, a little mini freezer. This is also an air fryer microwave, which is super handy. We have the kitchen, have all of our food in the bottom cabinets and our plates that we use on a daily. All of this storage, which is honestly half empty because I cannot reach half of them. Also have this little nook, which I basically used to work. Back in the front entry, we have the staircase. Over here, we have some cubby storage. This is my little vanity workspace with all of my makeup right over here. Just have more clothes, obviously my bags. My favorite part of the tiny house is a full shoe closet that fits 36 pairs of my high heels. A full walk-in closet. My living room becomes into my creator studio. It looks spacious because of the windows, or at least I tried. So we have our couch that transforms into a full queen size bed underneath the couch, which has so much storage. The moment you guys have all been waiting for, our loft. This is a full queen size mattress. Here we have little cubbies. Also my husband's gaming setup. Super comfy and we love it. And that's the final tiny house tour.
All right, that was my conversation with Tiffany. I appreciate Tiffany taking the time to sort of walk us through their decision to buy the land, put a tiny house on it, and build it themselves, keeping the footprint small for the tiny house design, but still getting everything that they want and they need out of it. So thank you again, Tiffany, for taking the time to chat with us. Make sure you check out everything that Tiffany's doing, Beauty and the Builder here on YouTube. Make sure you check them out. Make sure you check out their Instagram. Reach out and ask questions. You never know what could come from reaching out to ask questions for people, and it can't hurt. The more you know, the better informed you'll be on your own tiny journey. If you're new to this channel, please take time to subscribe. It helps me out a ton. The notification bell, if you tap that, you find out when I drop new videos. I drop new videos every single week. And if you're interested in watching more videos around DIY builds, I've got another one from another fantastic human out in Montana. So make sure you check out their DIY build as well too. And don't forget to think tiny. I'll see you guys in the next one.